Hello, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Amanda McFarland, and I'm a project manager here at Athene. Before we get to the main event, I have a couple housekeeping items. First, you'll notice you are in listen-only mode, which means your phones are muted for sound quality. Your questions are very much welcome. There is a chat box within your toolbar. Please submit any questions or comments there, and we will get to them during our live Q&A following the presentation, time permitting. Lastly, I want to remind everyone that today's session is being recorded. A link to the recording will be sent out after the webinar. At this time, I'm happy to introduce Eric Stanley, Director of Compliance at Athene. Eric, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Amanda. And to everyone who was able to join in, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hop on this webinar so we can discuss some of the upcoming changes due to the new NAIC model regulation changes, as well as some other changes we have made since we had the opportunity to touch the suitability form to make it even better. So as Amanda did mention, if you have any questions at all, please make sure you ask in the chat feature. I will do everything I can to get to all your questions and get those answered. If we do run out of time and I'm not able to get to your question, we are more than happy to answer that question either by calling into sales, or we can also try to potentially, if you have a string of questions, I'll be more than happy to get on a call and discuss those with you. So with that, we'll dig right into the webinar. So again, my name is Eric Stanley. I'm Director of Compliance and Suitability with Athene. First, we just want to set the scene for what we're going to discuss. We're going to go over the new NAIC Suitability and Annuity Transactions Model Regulation. We're going to talk about the best interest producer training requirements with that. Go through the transition rules of the forms. Do a walk of the suitability form updates. Also, just make sure everyone's aware of our suitability step-by-step guide. Look at the rate comparison form updates. Go over the new Appendix A, which is new with the new model regulation. And then again, we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end. So jumping right in with the revised suitability model regulation, again, this is just a high level. It requires an insurance producer to act in the best interest of the consumer. Provides that an insurance producer has acted in the best interest of the consumer if the producer is satisfied the following four components. One is the care obligation. Two is the disclosure obligation. You then have the conflict of interest obligation and the documentation obligation. So again, if you satisfy those four components, you have acted in the best interest of the consumer. It does require the producer to complete the Appendix A, and again, we're going to talk about that here in just a short bit. It's a prescribed form that provides required producer disclosures to consumers. Athene will require Appendix A to be completed and submitted with all applications. If we receive an application that we do not have the Appendix A completed and signed by both the consumer and the producer, it will NIGO the case and we are unable to approve and issue that policy until that has been satisfied. And then each state must adopt for it to become effective in that state. And this is either through regulation or through legislative activity. Now, Arizona and Iowa have adopted and will be effective January 1st, 2021. We will continue to update you as additional states adopt and also approve the new training courses. States that we are aware that are currently pending is Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, Ohio, and Rhode Island. Now, one thing that we do want to make clear, we as Athene are not going to have one suitability form for new model reg states and one suitability form for states that have not adopted the new model regulation. So effective 1/1, we will have a new suitability form applicable in all states. So that way it's going to give you less confusion. You just still have one suitability form to use, unless you are in the states of Florida or New York where they do have their own suitability form. But all other states, whether they have or have not adopted the new model, will still have just one single suitability form for you to use. So the best interest producer training requirements. So what is required? So as states adopt the regulation, there will be new regulatory training requirements. So again, as of the date of today's date, Iowa and Arizona have adopted the new reg with a January 1st effective date. If you were licensed in either state before January 1st, 2021, and have completed model law training for the previous rule, you must complete the 1-hour best interest supplemental training course or the new 4-hour training course. For those licensed on or after January 1st, 2021, the new 4-hour training course is required. So let's look at that by state. So again, if you have completed the previous model law course, then the following rules apply. Iowa. The 1-hour supplemental course must be taken prior to July 1st, 2021. Iowa has adopted both the 1-hour and the 4-hour courses, and they are currently available. Arizona. The 1-hour supplemental course must be taken prior to June 30th, 2021. Arizona has also approved the 1-hour course, which is available now. The new 4-hour course has also been approved, but is not available until January 1st, 2021. So if you are in either one of those states, you're going to want to pay very close attention to the information on this screen so you know the producer training requirements that you must make sure that you meet. And again, as new states come out and adopt the new model reg, we will in turn provide the training requirements for those states. So when it comes to the new model regulation and the new forms and updated forms, so what are the transition rules? Applications signed on or after January 1st, 2021, or received on or after January 14th, 2021, will require the new suitability form, the new rate comparison form, if applicable, and Appendix A. So again, apps signed on or after 1/1 or received on or after 1/14, new suitability form, the new rate comparison form, if applicable, and the new Appendix A form. Now, applications signed on or before December 31st, 2020, and received by Athene on or before January 14th, 2021, will require the old forms. So again, it's all going to be dependent upon the application sign date and when it is received at Athene. So again, please make sure you're paying close attention. This goes for every state outside of Florida and New York, since they have their own suitability forms. Now, I do see someone ask the question, how do you get the Florida suitability form? The Florida suitability form is on our Athene portal, so that is available to you on our website. So a very important note, if you use Firelight, the e-signing ceremony must be completed by all required parties by 3 p.m. Central Time on December 31st. Otherwise, the new suitability form, the new rate comparison form, if applicable, and the new Appendix A will be required. So again, please make sure you pay very close attention to these. This affects all states outside of Florida and New York. So this is not just for states that have adopted. This is for all states outside of Florida and New York. So we want to show the updates that we've made to the suitability form. Some were because of the new regulation. I think you're going to see the majority of the updates from the new model regulation are more in the attestations that we have on the owner and producer confirmation. We've also taken this opportunity to improve the form based on feedback that we've gotten from our groups and our producers. So for those of you who provide feedback, we really do appreciate it. We do pay attention and listen, and we have improved our form with that feedback. So we'll kind of quickly walk through the form, and then I'm going to go through the changes more closely. So again, this suitability form is effective January 1st, 2021, and it excludes Florida and New York. So as you can see, it's pretty similar to the form that we just came out with in July. So let's take a closer look, though, at what those changes might be. So one piece of great feedback we got, the opening paragraph of the suitability form was a little difficult to understand. So again, we appreciate and we took the feedback and we tried to bullet point that out here. Basically what this section goes through is, how do you complete the suitability form, or who do you complete it on behalf of? So again, we tried to bullet point that out for irrevocable trust ownership, revocable trust ownership, other non-natural entities as well. Also, bullet point 4, I want to make sure everyone pays attention to. For additional information on how to complete this worksheet, Please review the step-by-step guide, and it even gives you a link to the guide. We're going to go through the guide here a little bit later in the presentation. It is an invaluable source to you. If you are a brand new producer or someone who's been writing with us for 10 plus years, it will have information in there that you will find helpful. If you ever have contracts kicked back because something is incorrect on the suitability form, maybe you left blank, maybe you weren't sure how to answer it, maybe you're not sure what we're asking, that step-by-step guide is an invaluable resource for you to use. Please take advantage of that. Next is the financial objectives section. So one thing I want to point out is that question A, source of income. So the customer or their household, what is their source of income? You'll see that I've highlighted the word salary. One thing that we've noticed is that we had a lot of producers and customers filling out applications to where instead of marking the source of income as household wages, they would mark other and write in salary. Well, obviously, as we all know, household wages and salary are the same. So we've added that word. You know, if one piece of advice I would give to everybody when completing the suitability form is take advantage of the checkbox options. If there's a checkbox option for it, mark it. If you list other, it means that there's not a checkbox option available. Other will require heightened suitability review. So it could potentially delay your case because we are reviewing what other means and what information provided in the other. So again, salary, 401k or pension, Social Security, rental income, 403b income, or investment income, make sure you're using the checkbox options. If the income is not from one of those 6 sources, then you would use other. Now, one thing we've also done is improve question C. Do you anticipate any significant changes to the following during the surrender charge period of this annuity for the household? Previously, it was just a question, and it was a yes or no, and then it had you, if there's any of these types of changes, explain. Well, what we were seeing is we were getting applications where the explanation didn't really have the level of detail that we needed. So we've improved this. We've asked 3 very specific questions. Where there'll be an increase in living expenses, yes or no? Is there going to be a decrease in monthly income, yes or no? And a decrease in liquid assets, yes or no? Anytime yes is marked, you need to provide the amount of the increase or decrease and in how many years that will occur. So for example, if I'm going to buy an annuity today, but I know that in 1 year, my living expenses are going to increase, I'm going to mark yes. If yes, what is the amount of increase? In a year, my living expenses are going to increase by $1,000. So I would say, if yes, amount of increase, $1,000 in 1 year. So again, please make sure if you mark yes, you're filling out the other information to the right-hand side. If you do not, it will NIGO the case, and you will have to go back and have this corrected by your customer. One other change that we've made, an improvement, is question E. Now, we've always asked, what is your general risk tolerance? What happens is if someone marks aggressive, we have to ask, why purchase a fixed or fixed index annuity if you have an aggressive mindset? As obviously fixed and fixed index annuities are not an aggressive type product. So we've added this explanation line. That way, if your customer does mark aggressive, which is perfectly fine, just explain how they have an aggressive risk tolerance in purchasing a fixed or fixed index annuity contract. So now let's move on to source of funds. One thing that we've changed, and I think you'll notice a big change here, we've actually broken out source of funds into 2 sections. Question H is source of funds coming from a replacement source. Question I is funds coming from a non-replacement source. So the first thing I would point out is, if you are sending a contract to Athene and you're funding it through a savings account, on question H, since there is no replacement source, you have to mark not applicable. We cannot have any questions left blank or unanswered when it's completed on the suitability form. So even if you have no replacement source, make sure you mark not applicable. If you don't, we will have to come back and have that corrected. And again, we have added that language under the question. Check all that apply. If not applicable, the not applicable checkbox is required to be selected. We cannot accept incomplete applications in suitability forms. Now, so again, if funds are coming from a replacement source, what is the funding source for the annuity? Basically, everything in question H is a replacement. It's an annuity coming from a life insurance, coming from an IRA annuity, coming from an individual 403B annuity, coming from death proceeds where the beneficiary has already put it in their own name, either through assumption or inheritance, a 457B annuity, again, not applicable. And then if we're missing something that's not available on those checkbox options, that's a replacement. That's when you would choose other, and please make sure you explain the source. Very similar, if funds are coming from a non-replacement source, what is the funding source? And again, let's say that it's only a replacement from another annuity contract in existence, and there's no non-replacement source, you have to mark not applicable. Again, we cannot have any questions unanswered. So non-replacement sources, checking, savings. One thing I will point out to you with checking and savings, if it's coming from a checking or savings account and the value is $250,000 or greater, we will come back and ask you for the origin of those funds. Basically, we just want to understand that's a very large sum of money being written out of a checking or savings account. We want to better understand the origin of those funds. You will notice in our step-by-step suitability guide, it does call that out, stating that that would be needed on that value. Other non-replacement sources, a CD, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, an IRA non-annuity, a 401k or pension plan, money market, a group 403B annuity, a group 403B mutual funds, individual 403B mutual funds, 457B mutual funds, again, death benefit proceeds. Maybe they took a death claim payout and they're just writing a check to Athene. Again, so that would not be a replacement. It was never put in their name. Again, you always have the option of other if there's something that we had not included on the checkboxes, and then I guess, again, not applicable. One thing I would say, please make sure that, again, you're using the checkboxes to your advantage. One thing, again, if it's marked other, it requires heightened suitability review for someone to manually review that case. So what we do see is today is someone will put that the source of funds is from a pension, but they don't mark 401k or pension plan. They mark other and write pension. So again, please make sure you utilize the checkbox options available to you. If there is not a checkbox option applicable to the source, then you would choose other. And again, just to reiterate, if you do not have a source coming from either a replacement or non-replacement, you have to mark not applicable. Now, if it is coming from a non-replacement source, so under question I, you're going to see another question. If the source of funds are from a non-replacement source, are there penalties associated with that funding source? For example, if they have a CD, is there any penalty to close out that CD? If so, you would mark yes. If yes, what's the company name, the account number, and the penalty dollar amount? If there is a non-replacement source, but there's no penalty, you mark no. Now, question J has not changed. We still need to find out, is any of the premium intended for this annuity from a reverse mortgage? So now let's go to the financial status section. I will say this is probably the section of the suitability form that we get the most comments and feedback on. So what we try to do is we try to combine some of these questions to give a better path to determining net worth and total assets. One of the number one issues that we have at Athene is math errors. So we'll kind of go through some of those as well. The first thing I do want to point out is where you see the red arrow at this point. Athene has never allowed primary residence or automobiles to count towards net worth or liquid assets. Effective 1/1, Athene is not going to be able to count personal property either. So effective 1/1, primary residence, automobiles, and personal property cannot be included as part of your financial information for net worth and liquid assets. Personal property includes anything, antiques, paintings, guns, coin collections. Basically, if it is a personal property, other things, we see appliances, we see household furniture, we see chandeliers, we see magazine collections. So again, effective 1/1, personal property cannot be included in any part of their financial picture. We always understand that some values on the suitability financial section may be approximated, but please make sure all financials add up correctly. Math errors or inconsistencies will absolutely cause processing delays because the customer has to fix them. So again, we're going to kind of go through an example here in a second, but I cannot stress enough to make sure that financials add up and there are no math errors. So the change that we've made to this financial section, you'll notice that question K is now one section versus two. On the current suitability form, we had the optional section and the required section broken out. Apparently that did cause some confusion. So let's talk about what we've made a change here. So the highlighted section on the arrow number 2. Sections of table K below are provided for your convenience to assist in determining the total household assets and is optional. Checking, savings, value of life insurance, money market CD, all that stuff, that's purely optional. It's there if you want to use this chart as a roadmap to get to what the customer's true total assets are. So all highlighted questions below in question K are required and will result in delays in processing if not completed. So the grayed out highlighted areas, annuities out of surrender term if 59.5 or above, annuities out of surrender term if under age 59.5, and annuities in surrender term for all ages. Those are the only 3 required sections of question K. Again, if you do not complete one of those 3 sections and leave it blank, you will get NIGO'd and we'll have to go back to the customer for corrections. Now, some good news. We will allow you to list 0, a dash, NA, none. You just have to give us something. Blanks are not acceptable in any fashion for those 3 required questions under section K. Now, all non-highlighted questions, again, are optional. We will not review them as part of the suitability assessment. It is just there to help you determine what the customer's household assets and household net worth truly is. So again, you'll notice I highlighted again in section K. The highlighted areas below are required and must be completed. For required values, do not leave any blanks. It will be NIGO'd 100% of the time, and you will have to go back to the customer to have that corrected. If not applicable, you must list 0, a dash, NA. You can write in none. You have to give us something. A blank, we cannot assume what a blank means. So again, just another way to reiterate, those are the 3 required sections of question K. Now, the bottom part of the financial status section on page 3 of our suitability form. So I talked about math errors. One thing I will say, question N. So what we're determining is what's the household's net worth. So total household assets is question L. That's everything they have liquid and non-liquid. That's their total assets. Question M, what is their total household liabilities and debt? Exclude mortgage on their primary residence and or automobile debt. Now, again, here you can list 0, you can list a dash, you can list NA, you can write none. You cannot leave it blank. If M is blank, we will come back, NIGO it, and require the client to correct. So then L minus M equals total household net worth. I can't tell you the amount of applications that we get where total household assets minus debt does not equal question N. So again, math errors are NIGO'd and your customer has to correct. So please make sure you're double checking the math. Question O, total household liquid assets after annuity purchase. So Athene's liquid asset guidelines remain unchanged. If you're under age 59.5, you have to have at least 3 months of expenses covered by liquid assets. And if you're 59.5 or above, you have to have 6 months of expenses covered by liquid assets. So what one of our biggest NIGOs for suitability is around question O. We've even given you the calculations for replacements and non-replacements. So I'll give you an example of what we see. You have a customer who in question L, they list they have $1 million in total assets. They're going to send Athene $600,000. Question O is answered $700,000. Question O is after the annuity purchase. If they only have $1 million in total household assets and Athene is being sent $600,000, the absolute max the customer could have liquid is $400,000. Our biggest NIGO around the financial section, and one of the biggest NIGOs for suitability at Athene is around producers who fill out question O and they have total liquid assets too high. So for replacements, question O, total household liquid assets after annuity purchase, plus the total household premium cannot be greater than total household assets. Another is question O, total household liquid assets, plus annuities in surrender, which is one of the questions in question K, cannot be greater than total household assets. For non-replacements, annuities in surrender from question K, plus total household premium, plus the answer in question O cannot be greater than total household assets. So please pay very close attention to these sections. These are by far the most common NIGOs that we have because of just pure math errors. So please take an extra minute to make sure that those add up correctly. You're going to notice that our owner confirmation and producer confirmation remain very much unchanged. The only thing you're going to notice is additional attestations to meet the new model regulation requirements. So again, this section above on the owner confirmation that's highlighted, that is just for California. If it's California, please make sure that you complete that question. Question B, we always say NA or none are not acceptable. You are required to list disadvantages that you discussed with the owner, discussed with the producer at the time of selecting the annuity. So you always have to have disadvantages. And then owner signature and the joint owner signature and date. Joint owner obviously applicable only if there's a joint owner. Very similar to Massachusetts on the producer confirmation. This is only for Massachusetts applications. Again, the same thing. You are required as the producer to list disadvantages that you discuss with your client upon selecting the annuity. And then the producer signature, please make sure always you sign and date. So let me quickly just show our suitability step-by-step guide. I will probably tell you from a suitability perspective, this is one of the best resources we have to show you how to complete a suitability form. It's, I would say, definitely not utilized near enough. So please take some time out to review this. If you have common questions about, what we're asking or what we want or how to do something in the suit form, this will answer your questions. It goes through every question through the suitability form and tells you exactly what we're looking for. It also gives you red flag things to pay attention to. For example, question I of non-replacement source. If you mark checking and savings, here we actually tell you if checking and savings is selected and Athene will receive $250,000 or more from that source, please provide a written explanation to describe the origin of those funds. I will tell you a majority of the cases that we get sent into Athene where checking and savings is marked and the value is over $250,000 or more, do not send the explanation. We have to go back out and ask for it, so it's a NIGO. If you send that in up front, it will save you time. I mentioned there's some red flag callouts. So for example, you'll see the one on the left-hand side of the screen. When completing questions K through Q, please double check your math. Any math errors or inconsistencies may delay processing and be required to be corrected by the customer. Math errors are just not allowed on a suitability financial section. We have to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of the customer's financial picture. We cannot make any assumptions. So that's why we are so crucial on getting math errors corrected by the customer. Kind of a continuation here, the step-by-step guide, just some other red flag callouts. You'll notice below question O at the top, we go through the replacement and the non-replacement calculations for liquid assets, just to make that as clear as possible. We call out that monthly disposable income of less than $500 per month. That will require heightened review at Athene to make sure that we're comfortable with the customer's financial picture. So again, this really is an invaluable source. Please make sure you utilize this step-by-step guide. Next is our rate comparison form. We have received some great feedback from our producers in our groups that we have actually been able to implement into this form. So let me go through those changes. As always on our rate comparison form, list all strategies. We are required to compare what the client has available to them on the current annuity to what they're going to have available to them on the new annuity with Athene. We are not required to just review what they're allocated to. We have to review all strategies and rates in its entirety. we have to review everything they have available to them. So list all available index strategy options and rates, as well as all fixed strategy options and rates for the replaced contract. Now, if there is no fixed strategy option available on the contract being replaced, that is very rare, but we do know there's a couple of contracts that do not have fixed options. If there is no fixed strategy option available on the contract being replaced, please provide a copy of the most recent statement or renewal letter showing that there is no fixed strategy option available. It's incredibly uncommon for a fixed indexed annuity to not have a fixed option. We understand that there are a couple of annuity contracts where that is correct. All we ask for is a copy of the statement or renewal letter showing that. We will document that in the file and be able to continue forward. Now, any corrections to this rate comparison form are required to be acknowledged by both the primary writing producer and the owner. We want to make that clear. We get a lot of questions from the producer. Well, can I just correct this and send it in to you? No, this is a customer form. The customer does have to acknowledge any changes, just like they do on our other forms. Now, one piece of great feedback that we got was around the fixed option. We got feedback of, well, you list all the places to put the index strategies. You don't have a specific section called out for the fixed strategy option. That's excellent feedback, and we have definitely taken that. So you'll notice that the very first section on the replaced contract side is the fixed strategy option. And then all we're going to ask for is what's the current fixed rate percentage and what's the term. So they're currently in a fixed strategy, or they currently have an availability of a fixed strategy option of a 2% rate for 1 year. And then again, below, you would list all the index strategy options. Now, one thing that we are going to now be asking for in the rate comparison form is basically your rationale. Rate comparisons are used whenever the rationale is Athene's going to provide better potential. Where better potential on its own is not really enough of a reason to replace, because potential is just that, it's potential, there's no guarantee. So this is where we're going to ask you as the producer and the customer to explain that. So part of the new suitability regulation for the NAIC regulation changes is around replacements. And you don't just have to show a benefit to the replacements. The new requirement is you have to show a substantial benefit for replacements. So this is how we're going to meet that. You have to be able to tell us, as well as the owner, and articulate how Athene is going to provide better potential. If you're coming to us for higher caps, you need to list that, you're moving the contract for higher cap rates. We are then going to compare to make sure Athene offers higher cap rates. Maybe you're coming to Athene for higher par rates. We're going to compare to make sure we offer higher par rates. Same thing with, maybe the contract that currently exists does not have any volatility control options, and the customer is looking for volatility control options. So we're going to make sure that the other company has none, and that what they're going into with Athene does have volatility control options. That's the type of information we're looking for. How is Athene providing better potential? Now, you cannot leave this question blank. NA, none are not acceptable. You do have to list your rationale for how Athene is providing better potential. So for Appendix A, like I said, this is a new form for states that have adopted the new model regulation. So effective 1/1, this will be required for all applications sold in Iowa and Arizona. It must be submitted with the application, complete and signed by both parties. If it's not complete or signed by both parties, you will get this contract NIGO'd, and you will have to send us a correct, complete, signed by both parties, Appendix A, before we can approve and issue the contract. So with that, I'm going to quickly jump into questions, but I did want to point out, if I can't get to your question or you have additional questions, we truly have the best sales desk in the industry by far. Please make sure to reach out to them. They are a vast wealth of knowledge, and they are more than willing and more than capable of answering your question. If you ask a question that they are not able to answer for you, they will find the answer and get back to you. So again, we truly do have the best sales team in the industry. Their phone number listed, 888-266-8489. Choose option 3 and extension 18670. So with that, I'm going to start going through some of these questions. And again, I will do everything I can to get through every question that you have asked. So we've been able to answer the question about the suitability form for Florida. Again, you can find that on our Athene portal. It says, will we get an email to take the 1 hour update with a link? We are actually doing that through RegEd. So we've sent out a few communications. I believe there's another yet to go. But the best place to do that we use is RegEd. It says, is the app with the new required forms available on the website for paper apps now? Or will this only be available after 12/31? It's only available after 12/31. So this will be loaded, I believe, the night of 12/31 and available effective 1/1. Has RegEd added the 1 hour Arizona 1 hour course? I do not know if they've officially added it. That's probably a good question to ask RegEd. Is this applied to the application that originated from Crump? I'm not sure of what specific question that is, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to answer that. Looks like they have left. Is the right bridge in Crump not enough? I'm sorry, I don't know what right bridge at Crump is. That may be a question for them. So another question we have is, are those dollar amounts in years for Part C annual, I assume? Yes. So if you go back to question C, where we're talking about basically increase in expenses, decrease in income, decrease in monthly expenses. So question C here. Yes, we are looking for annual amounts. And, let me clarify. I apologize. Increase in living expenses. I think what you're looking for from an increase in living expenses, you can designate it. If you want to list annual or monthly, just let us know. Decrease in monthly income is specifically talking about monthly income, so it would be monthly. For increase in living expenses, just let us know if it's annual or if it's monthly. Is Schedule C income also counted as wages, salary, or other? So this is, it's going to be the same thing. So, in question on the, let me get back to it here real quick. So question C, decrease in monthly income. It's the same type of income that we're talking about on the source of income question. So let me jump to it here real quick. So when you're telling us on this section, their question P, total monthly household income, it's anything that they consider income. So if you're going to see anything decrease during the surrender charge period, that's the information that we are asking for. Question of, if they mark moderately aggressive, no further information will be required. That is correct. We only ask for an additional explanation if they mark aggressive. It says, will the system stop me from going forward if I miss clicking on not applicable? I believe the system does not allow you to continue until all questions are answered. For question H, so let me get back to question H just so we can all see here. Are these, can you explain more about death benefit proceeds? What if it's just a lump sum payout and it will require a product comparison? So the way to determine if a death benefit proceed is going to be a replacement or not, if you have an individual, John Smith, and they passed away and their wife, Mary Smith, was the beneficiary, if that contract was ever put into Mary Smith's name and she's then replacing that contract after it goes into her name, that is a replacement. If that contract was never put in Mary Smith's name, it is not a replacement. So it all depends on how they handled the death claim. If it was assumed or inherited or put in their name and somehow, it would be a replacement. If it was not, it would not be considered a replacement. It says, our broker-dealer has their own suitability review and best interest documents. They provide an approved letter when our case passes suitability. Why does Athene, some of your question, I apologize, has been cut off. Why does Athene require an additional suitability review? So we do have some broker dealers who have suitability delegation, meaning that Athene does not do the suitability. If your broker dealer is approving it, but it still has to go through Athene suitability, that means that your broker dealer does not have suitability delegated, and Athene is responsible and liable for the suitability of that case, so we have to do the review. For suitability, how can it be NA? Doesn't it have to come from somewhere? From suitability question I. So the reason question I, which is just non-replacement source, the reason it can be not applicable is maybe it's only coming from a replacement source. So if the money is just coming to us from life insurance, you would complete question H. If there's no source coming from checking, CD, mutual fund, stock, anything in question I, then question I is not applicable because there's no non-replacement source. It was said that marking other in H or I would lead to a manual review. Does this mean the other questions are not being reviewed manually? So we actually have a homegrown suitability system that does a lot of automation and suitability review for us. There are certain questions that do have to have manual review, but close to half of the applications submitted to Athene go through automatically because our system is built to look for triggers, and we build in tolerances and everything for every question, and then what it also is appropriate and not appropriate. See, what is the difference between death benefit proceeds? I think I have answered that. Please define replacement source versus non-replacement source. A replacement source is any funds that are coming to us from a contract that already exists in any form of an annuity or any form of a life insurance. So annuity, life insurance, IRA annuity, individual 403B annuity, 457B annuity. So if it's coming from any form of annuity or life insurance, it is a replacement. The only caveat to that is it's under question I. If it's coming to us from a group 403B annuity, Group 403B annuities, by definition and by the regulation, are not replacements. So Group 403B annuity is the only type of annuity that is not a replacement. Does personal property include a secondary house or land? No, personal property would not include secondary house or land. Personal property, again, is more things like furniture, appliances, guns, antiques, valuables, those types of things. When you say personal property, does that mean you cannot include the second month? Oh, we've already got that. I have seen emails from many carriers on the new NAIC, but Athene has a paragraph that I haven't seen from others. Is regarding best interest standard, regarding contests. I'm sorry, I apologize. Looks like your question has been cut off. Is gold count as personal property? Yes, gold bars can be counted as personal property because that is an actual tangible. Those have a daily value. You can walk into a gold and silver shop and you can actually sell that. That is a term of value. Yes, that is acceptable. Can you elaborate on the particular section of the email on this call? So again, I apologize. I'm not sure which email you reference. Is your decision to include personal property and financials from new regulation? It's actually from exams that we have received, not necessarily on Athene, but we have received some state inquiries around personal property. I think if you write with Athene and if you write with other carriers, you'll notice that most other carriers already do not include personal property. We are just moving in that same direction. I find agents get confused with O because they have two pending apps and they put different amounts because it doesn't specify liquid assets after all. So I guess the way I would answer this is if you look at the top of the financial section, what it does say is please include the proposed annuity premiums based on where the funds are currently held. So if you already have funds that are at Athene that are pending, technically those are with Athene. So, and or if you have, everything is based off of the household. So if you have a husband and wife who the same day are buying an annuity contract, then as a household, they have that much less in liquid assets. So if, for example, you have John and Mary Smith, they have $1 million in net worth in total assets, and each of them are going to buy a $100,000 annuity. Well, when they submit those contracts to Athene, they're submitting $200,000 as a household. They're not submitting $100,000 individually. So again, it's because we go off of household. If a customer says they maintain cash or gold position in metals, are those identified in the other section? I guess it depends on what section again it is you're talking about. We don't make you identify what type of assets they have because again, everything in section K, except for the 3 questions around annuity values, are optional. My question is that if we are not required to ask about liquid assets or non-liquid assets, how do we find out the answer to the question? Well, you're required to ask those questions. We're just not requiring you to give us the detail. We're not requiring the true asset breakdown. You as the producer are required to determine a full picture of the customer's financial section. As a carrier, what we want to know is how much do they have in total annuity premium with Athene and everywhere else? What is their total assets? everything combined, liquid, non-liquid, everything they have for the household. What is their total household liabilities and debt? And then that gets us to their net worth. You as the producer are required to ask those questions. We don't have to gather that level of detail because you're giving us the total values. For Florida, is it still 20, 40,000? Yes, Florida does still have their own liquid asset guidelines because their suitability form, they do not require expenses to be asked for on the suitability form. Someone just listed that should say question L. I apologize. I'm not sure which specific area you're discussing. Total household assets has a home. Does this include the mortgage of the home or exclude it? So total household assets, so in total net worth, so let me jump to total net worth here. You'll notice at the top of the financial section, it does state that primary residence, automobiles, and personal property cannot be included in net worth and liquid assets. So the home cannot be included in net worth. It also means that when you give us their total liabilities and debt, you do not have to give us the debt on the home. The suitability form is part of the app, correct? So there can be math errors and it can be e-signed, correct. So the suitability form is part of the application. Corrections cannot be e-signed, however. Corrections outside of the state of Florida, Florida requires everything in writing. Outside the state of Florida, Athene will allow suitability corrections from the customer over the phone. This form is not yet on the Athene website. It will not be up until 1/1. If that explanation is required in some instances, why is Athene not providing a place on the form to add the info and the instructions on when to do so? I'm assuming this is talking about the $250,000 or higher. The reason that we don't have the explanation listed on the form itself is it's a difficult thing to do. Obviously one thing that we get told a lot is maybe your form is too long. We don't want it any longer, keep it short. The more places that we give for explanations, the longer the form gets, and it would break up this section. So the suitability step-by-step guide, though, does clearly state for that question that if there is $250,000 or higher from checking or savings, that you have to send us a written explanation. That is listed at the top of the page around source of funds on the suit step-by-step guide. On replacement options, would you please add registered index-linked annuities? They don't have a fixed option or annuitization option. Okay, sorry. On replacement options, would you please? An index-linked annuity, however, would be an annuity. So we don't have to designate on the suitability form what type of an annuity it is. Just that a registered index-linked annuity, so RILA, would be considered an annuity on the replacement section of the suitability form. Can we just use the new suitability forms on contracts to be written before? Unfortunately not. Everything with suitability it's very much built into systems at carriers. So we are not able to accept any new suitability forms prior to applications written 1/1 or after. Appendix A will be on all new suit forms. We're not required except Iowa and Arizona. So Appendix A will only be available to you out there and be required if it's written in Iowa and Arizona, effective on 1/1. Any states that then jump on and adopt a new model, once it's effective in their state, Appendix A would then also be required in those states. But yes, that Appendix A will only be required and available in Iowa and Arizona effective 1/1. Are we able to send the recording to agents who are on the call? Absolutely, please do. This is being recorded. We want this to get out to as many people as possible, so please share this with all your producers. Is the suitability guide currently available? Yes, the suitability step-by-step guide has been actually out there since July 24th. It is currently available, and the form number, if you want to find it on our portal, is 20543. I think we've answered the question of what's the difference between replaceable and non-replaceable. If there is no disadvantage of the owner agent, what isn't acceptable there? Well, you can't have no disadvantages. One way or the other, whether it's a disadvantage to tying someone's money up into a 10-year or 7-year or 5-year annuity with surrender charges, that is at bare minimum a disadvantage. So having surrender charges is a definite disadvantage. Now, that does not mean it's a bad choice. It's a bad option for the customer. Obviously, we think they're fantastic options because the benefits far outweigh any disadvantages. But in and of itself, having a surrender charge and only available to certain percent of their money until it's out of that surrender schedule is a disadvantage compared to any other type of financial product. with the new suitability Appendix A, and what not be implemented on the e-app. So I apologize, I'm not understanding the question. Just to clarify, every producer must take the 1-hour supplemental class in 2021. Right now, it's only for Iowa and Arizona. And again, it depends on if you've already completed the previous model law training. Came in late. Is the new suitability a result of Reg BI or internal decision? The new suitability, we're obviously following the new model regulation updates. However, we were able to make some of the new changes and improved changes to the suitability form at our own discretion. Some changes to the suit form were required by the regulation to meet the regulation requirements. Others were at our own discretion. If the client suitability form is approved, is it possible for the client to decrease their premium? I think that's why it's supposed to mean if the client suitability form is not approved, can they decrease their premium? It's all going to depend on the situation. Sometimes decreasing premium may not lead to an approval. Sometimes it might. So it's all going to depend on the rationale. So there's a question here, just to confirm regarding personal property. So can a fully restored 1939 Studebaker not be included? No, we never allow for net worth or liquid assets any form of primary home, any automobiles, or personal property. Since obviously that would fall into the automobile category, it can never be counted in net worth or in liquid assets. Follow-up question regarding expected changes to income or expenses. I have run into a situation where customers plan to move to a location where their cost of living would definitely be higher. However, they had not moved there yet and so had no idea how much their cost of living would increase. How would you want this question answered? I mean, all you can do is answer it the best that you can. If you know that increases are going to costs are going to increase when you move, the explanation is, the customer is moving and costs are going to go up. I think you could probably do a cost of living analysis just to kind of get an idea. Obviously, from a suitability perspective, we have to be very clear on what the customer's current financials are going to be, as well as during the surrender charge period. We don't really want to play any guessing games, as we need to make sure that we know the decision we're making and how it's going to affect that customer. And then the suggestion regarding question O, which is total household liquid assets. If you remove total from the beginning of the first sentence, you'll see the number of MIGOs. The reason we have to list total is because it's total household, and that we used to not say that. However, what would happen is you'd have a husband and a wife submit contracts to us, and they would only include their, each of their own. They wouldn't include the totality of the two. Since everything in Athene is based off of the household, we have to make sure that it's including everything. Where do we place the current interest rate on the existing rate comparison worksheet? So on the existing two-day, effect, again, it'll change on 1/1, two-day, just list it anywhere on the rate comparison form. Just write in fixed rate and put the percentage. Are the changes for all states? No. The changes on the suit forms are for all states. The model regulation changes are currently only for Iowa and Arizona. See, what is the name of the book that you can locate the suitability guide book? So, this guide, if you're talking about the suitability step-by-step guide, it is going to be, it's form 20543 on our portal. Again, it's already available out there, and it's the step-by-step guide to completing the Athene customer identification and suitability confirmation worksheet. Does Athene count foreign income assets? No, only something in the United States. Wouldn't there always be a decrease in liquid assets since a new annuity will make the funds applied? Yes, absolutely. So anything that is being sent to Athene is considered non-liquid assets when we ask for liquid assets after annuity purchase. When will the new suit step-by-step guide be available? It's currently available in the current form today. The new version will be effective on 1/1. For question H, death benefit proceeds put in wife's name, but the investment vehicle was only in the brokerage account, not annuity. No, that is not a replacement. Again, replacements are only if the source is a life insurance or annuity contract. Okay, so it looks like the question that we had answered around the no explanation line and why it's not clarified on the form did regard to the $250,000 of premium. Again, we can't put everything that we could ever hope for on the suitability form. Otherwise, it's going to be multiple pages. But that's what the suit step-by-step guide is there for. Will IMOs be able to speak directly to the suitability team? That's not really my realm, so I won't answer that question. Are fillable apps and new suitability forms available on Athene Connect? or should contact sales desk to have emailed? So if you go out and you actually go to our portal, those are fillable, I believe, but it's good to check with the suitability team. Are you going to have to share this recording to our team? Absolutely. Everyone who attended this call will get a copy of this presentation. Are you required to ask the client about rental property as part of the suitability? You're required to have a full picture of the client's financials. And if their financials include rental property, then yes, you would be. One thing that makes very clear is that property or assets owned by a business, an LLC, are not part of someone's personal. So even if, let's say myself, Eric Stanley, I have my own personal assets under my Social Security number, and then I have Eric Stanley LLC under a separate tax ID. Anything that is owned by that LLC, such as rental property, cannot be counted in my own personal assets. It's an entirely different entity that owns those assets. They cannot be counted for me personally, even though I own them through my LLC. Appendix A only required for Iowa and Florida, right? No, that's incorrect. Appendix A is only required for Iowa and Arizona. If clients have more than one house, does the second or third house count as assets? It does. Outside of primary residence, you can count a second or third home, but only the equity. You cannot count, obviously, any debt on that in their net worth. There's a question, what is the implication of this? And then unfortunately, there's nothing more there. As states adopt the new regulations, will there be a grace period for Appendix A to be required? As states adopt it, they're going to give some leeway, heads up of, when the adoption and the effective date will be. As of that immediate effective date, Appendix A would be required for any applications written on or after that date. Again, the recording is going to be sent out to everybody. From the exposure you had given the suitability movements over the last few years, how would you summarize areas that need strong attention in the FIA sale and service in the industry has grown? So that's a great question. It's really not probably meant for this setting since it doesn't really affect the specific suitability form, but that is a great question that we'd be more than happy to have a discussion about. Can a question on filling out the form be answered by the internal sales desk? Yeah, if you have a question about how to complete a suitability form, our sales desk is more than equipped and capable of answering those questions for you. For question O, total household liquid assets after annuity purchase, is this a matter of subtracting the premium from the policy from total liquid and non-liquid? It's not, unfortunately, that simple because, again, you're talking about subtracting it from total liquid and not liquid. This question is just about liquid. So you cannot include non-liquid assets in the liquid assets calculation. For long-term unmarried couples, does Athene want to include partner and household assets? No. If they are unmarried, you are not able to include them in household assets. Household assets is strictly a spouse or domestic partner as determined by state law. So you cannot include long-term partners, unmarried couples. Those are not applicable. If all the assets of the customer are under the LLC, then will the LLC assets count? The only reason the LLC assets would count is if the LLC is buying the annuity. If you have a personal individual buying an annuity, absolutely nothing owned by the LLC can be counted. What is the implication? Sorry, I'm not, again, some of these questions are getting cut off. In the email sent with the presentation, would you be able to include the step-by-step guide as well? So unfortunately, and I apologize, this is something that is going to be auto sent out to you. We're not able to add just additional pieces to it, but it is available on the portal. So I'm glad that you do have some questions and want to view that. Again, it's an invaluable resource. So there's a question, the insurer shall establish and maintain reasonable procedures to identify and eliminate any sales contests, sales quotas, bonuses, and non-cash compensation. So I think it's we're trying to be asked a question maybe around the sales contest or quotas. Again, that's not really for this conversation. That's a separate conversation to be had. Looks like that's been asked about 2 or 3 different times in here. So at this point, we're actually at 1:59. We're 1 minute ahead of schedule. We've gone through all the questions. Again, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to jump on this call to learn about how Athene is handling the new NAIC model regulation changes, the suitability form changes, the rate comparison form, the Appendix A, everything. Again, please make sure you use the resources available to you. If you've never looked at these step-by-step guides for both the suitability and the product comparison worksheet, you will find them invaluable. Before you jump on a call and ask someone how to complete something, really use those because 9 times out of 10, these guides are going to answer your questions. But as always, if there's anything ever needed, again, please reach out to our sales desk. As mentioned earlier, we truly do have the best sales desk in the industry, and they are there to answer any questions that you may have. So again, thank you so much for your time and for attending, and we hope to talk to you all soon, and thank you for your business.